great. So I'm glad everyone showed up today. So obviously this isn't as cool as contract writing, but still a good turnout here. So yeah, just going over just home inspections in general. This is sometimes a more important thing, sometimes it's not. Last couple of years it's kind of going away. Starting to come back a little bit. We'll see how long it sticks around. But who wants to kind of start here when we should educate our clients about the home inspection?
First meeting.
Buyer's meeting, yes. This is 100% when we want to start this. A lot of work in inspection, this is mainly pertaining to buyers on this, is we want to start off early and educate them and set expectations. If we don't set expectations, you're asking yourself for headaches along the entire way, not just home inspections, everything. So that first buyer meeting, I always try to touch on the home inspection. That's our biggest hurdle when working with buyers. Kind of the home inspection and then the appraisal are two things we really got to jump over in transaction when we're working with buyers. The first of which happens is the home inspection. So on that,
well, you'll want to sit down with them at the buyer consult and maybe just kind of slow things down a little bit, but not over dramatize it, right? Like it's a very important part of the process, but it's really just a point to clarify with them. So the biggest two things to clarify in regards to the home inspection at that consult, I would say what's a defect, what's not a defect, right? Kev's got a pretty cool analogy, but I use the terms bones and organs, right? Like the human body, you need healthy bones and organs to operate properly. Same thing with a house, but you don't need lipstick, you don't need mascara. A lot of us, not myself included, are just fine the way they look. They don't need all that extra stuff. It's a choice, right? So we're going to take care of you when it comes to the bones and organs, but one thing we are going to ask you to think about today is eliminating those cosmetic type of things, because it's really not all right to ask for.
Yeah, so I use the analogy of either it's a health checkup on the house to make sure everything's still kind of running, operating properly. And the other analogy I like to use a lot of times is, hey, it's a used car. You're gonna have dings, dents, leaks. This thing is not gonna be perfect. We want to make sure that the main components of the car are running properly. Same thing with the house. To me, on a house, I think Tommy had a good one. I think it was kind of top 5 things. Roof, siding, windows, HVAC, crawl space. Anything else? Was the other one, Tommy? Yeah, those
siding, crawl.
Yeah, so kind of those 5 kind of bigger ticket items where you see a lot of your issues. What we're not worried about is the dings and dents. Leaks are leaks don't get better is one thing I'll say. So you're kind of getting roof leaks, stuff like that, stuff we want to probably address sooner than later. But if your kitchen faucet drips, we're not going to hold up the sale of a house for a drippy faucet. Okay, so we got to look at what's a major big ticket item, what's a true defect, and what's just kind of a little flaw that needs a little elbow grease. If you can fix it by going to Home Depot on a Saturday, that's not typically what we're going to be asking for. So we don't want to be holding up contracts with just small little tiny piddly things that are just kind of general common home ownership. And be able to explain that to clients up front saves you a lot of hassle, headache on the back end.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it might be blunt, but at the end of the day, if you have the type of client that you feel like is going to be really, really tough on a home inspection, on a resale, at the buyer consult, you may want to talk to them about the benefits of new construction, if that's something that they qualify for. If they don't qualify for new construction, that's a really good chance to kind of, I say again, calm them down in the moment and say, okay, well then we're going to have to adjust our mindset today, right? Because we can't go the new construction route. We're probably going to be dealing with some type of home inspection addendum. We got to have an open mind when it comes to that. Kev, when is it a good idea to do a home inspection?
This is all kind of contract dependent. How competitive is it? There's certain clauses, things that you put in there. If you're competing against nobody, leave the standard inspection language in there. It's all written in there to protect the buyer. In this case, we're talking about that's who you're representing on that. So if you can leave the standard language in there, always try to. I think it's always a good idea to have a home inspection. I'm not a giant fan of waiving them completely, just because we want to know what's going on with the house. We don't want someone to get in and find out, hey, we do have, $15,000 worth of crawl space, mold just caked in there. Also, when you're going through houses, you got to kind of be a home inspector yourself. Before you go waiving anything, you want to kind of check out those main components and make sure that, hey, these things kind of, pass at least the eye test. The inspector's really there to kind of give you some more details on it, but I do my best not to try to waive that, and then also got to let your clients know that that's a giant sort of deal breaker when you're negotiating a contract. If you have someone who's willing to waive a home inspection, when I'm representing a seller, I see that, I'm like, hell yeah, this is great, it's simple, easy, you don't have to worry about anything on it. But if you have buyers that aren't willing to waive a home inspection, don't waive it. You gotta represent them to the best of, your abilities and what they're comfortable doing. If they're not comfortable waiving it completely, we're not gonna, hold a gun to anyone's head and say, you gotta waive this. If they decide to not waive it and they lose, we shrug our shoulders and move on to the next one. It's not the end of the world. So if somebody else is willing to do that, then, congrats to them. We're not willing to do it. If they got it, we have to, kind of just take that with the next one and just know that that can be a giant sort of deal breaker, at the end of the day. So, yeah.
Yeah, and Kevin makes a good point too. I guess one thing that comes to mind is how can we get that information, right? How can we know who we're competing against? How can we know whether or not we should ask for one, or maybe talk to our clients about waiving it completely? Who's got an answer for that? Go ahead, Ariel.
Calling the listing agent.
Oh my gosh.
I will be honest, I lost out on 2 offers this past weekend, but I called the listing agent in both scenarios to ask what was important to them, introduce myself, and I used verbiage that I heard from you, Larry, actually, when you said, do you have any strong offers in hand? Because I wanted to know kind of what we were up against, how many people were in this war, because I know they can only disclose to us so much.
Yeah. And whether it's true or not, sometimes it feels like the more you talk with other agents, the more information you get, you become maybe a little more familiar with certain household names and stuff like that, and the information you get sometimes can help you a little bit more. But Ariel's right? I don't even think these are things that you send a text for or anything like that. Pick up the phone, call, ask the questions, get the info, and then be proud that you're doing everything you can for your client, And Kev did a pretty good job too about talking about when it's a good idea to waive it. Kev, how do you handle clients that are going to have to waive it based on where they're looking, popularity, inventory, but then they're a type of person that at the beginning doesn't make it seem like they want to waive it? How do you prep?
Yeah, I don't think anybody really, like I said, wants to waive the home inspection. Like I said, it's the health check on the house. You're getting ready to go spend, $300, $500, $1 million on the house. You want to make sure that things in good condition, good shape. So a lot of times when you're walking through the house, you need to be your own home inspector. Know what big ticket items are. Be able to point out, hey, this is good, this is bad. Also be able to know the craftsmanship of flips. There's little things you can see. I know when I go into a house and you got a 10-foot section of wall, and the quarter round is in 3 different pieces. It's been spliced together. To me, it's kind of like, all right, well, they did that pretty cheap, but instead of buying the 10-foot piece, they took all the scraps and put it all together, and it looks kind of junky and things like that. So little tiny things there also just play a big factor into making that decision and what they're comfortable doing. I also like to try to find out too, what's my client's background? Are they handy or not? Is their dad a contractor? Is their brother a plumber? Those are all sort of good things to kind of know, where they may be more willing to let go of some of that sort of stuff, or hey, that's not as big a deal as it would be for someone who can't swing a hammer or use a screwdriver. I have clients like that all the time, and that's kind of comes down to, hey, you're probably looking at condo, townhouse, new construction, if you can't do some of this sort of stuff, because if you're buying a house that's built in 1950 or 1990, there's gonna be a bunch of stuff that needs to be addressed or taken care of. So be able to go through that and be able to point that out to people and explain and know your clients, what are their capabilities, what can they do, what can they not do, what's out of their wheelhouse. Those are some of the big things that I try to get to know about my clients, and also just about the house. Trying to find out the ages of things, know how long dimensional shingle lasts, how old's the roof, asking those questions to those agents. How old's the HVAC system? Are you able to go to the unit and be able to decipher how old it is just based on looking at the serial number, or find out where they tucked the very tiny date into a corner mixed into a bunch of other numbers. To be able to look at all that sort of stuff and give your clients good solid advice. Hey, this is a 5-year-old HVAC unit. Poke the head in the crawl space, it's got a vapor barrier down, or hey, I can see that there's mold just caked on all the joists. Those are some things you can just kind of point out from the get-go, and that's when when you need to kind of, hey, we probably should get a home inspection based off of what the crawl space smells like when I open the door. Those are things you want to know. Also, just come back to the prep work. I let every single client know there's going to be mold in the crawl space, because there pretty much always is. There's just varying degrees of it. That way, when they get the home inspection report and hey, there's speckles on the joist, you know what, they kind of knew about that, not the end of the world, not a gigantic issue. Then when you get the stuff that looks like it's moving and growing as you look at it, That's a little bit different as well. So there's like varying degrees of all that stuff, but really just kind of having an idea of what you're looking at. We sell houses every single day. You need to know houses and the components of them, and how long things last, what things cost to repair, and what what's going to go next, what to budget for.
That's a good point. As Kevin was talking, the thing that came to mind is training, right? Like, don't train for a home inspection at your first home inspection. Shadowing at hometown used to be a huge thing. I think that's kind of gone by the wayside unless you're on a team. You don't need to be on a team to shadow somebody, but you need to be going to some home inspections before you have your first home inspection. Kev also made a really good point about kind of informally conducting an inspection as you walk around. I'm old-fashioned. I probably overthink things. I like to be with my buyers for a certain amount of time, but I don't like to be with them the whole time during a showing. To each their own. So usually, if I feel like I have something productive to do to still serve them while they're walking through the house, I don't feel like I'm hiding from my clients or anything like that, right? So I'm going around, I'm poking my head in the crawl, I'm poking my head in the attic, I'm doing some of the things that they're just not gonna do because they're in kind of that emotional state, and then reporting back to them on it. The best point that Kev made is if you do those things, if you kind of practice before the championship, when it gets there, it's not a big deal. It's like, hey, how cool is it to have a client when they find out they have mold in the crawl? They're like, well, we were expecting that. What do you think we should do? It's kind of like head them off at the pass before it can become an issue. That's pretty strong. Let's see what we got next. Okay. So we have grossly just gotten ahead of ourselves, but what is it okay to ask for as part of negotiating a repair request or addendum, and what's not okay and why? I think that goes back to the used car analogy, but I think you also need to make sure that you have the proper paper trail. I say the proper paper trail and push buttons. So if you think you have an issue in a crawl, but it needs to be diagnosed by somebody that's in the know, you need a fast push button. You need somebody that can still come within the inspection period and clarify it so that legally you can still get everything done. Another good example of that, everybody should have somebody in the HVAC industry on call as a realtor, because I would say crawls and HVAC, at least for me, those are two very prevalent things on home inspections. Now, if the roof, pardon my language, if the roof looks like shit, is that a home inspection item? Shannon with the best answer, the right answer. It could be. What's going to determine whether it is or not, though? And we'll roll with you.
Only if it's leaking actively. If it just looks terrible and it's the end of its life cycle or even past its life cycle, cannot ask for it.
Yeah. And what a great conversation to have up front at the buyer console. Like, look, inevitably, we are going to walk by a heat pump that looks like it wants to jump off a bridge. It's going to be rusty. Like, it might be the worst one that you've seen in your life. But if we go in and that bad boy is pumping heat or pumping AC the way it's supposed to, there's not a thing that we can do about it, because really what we're saying is, that sure is ugly. I wish it looked better. It functioning properly. Same thing with the roof. They might even have a couple of patches on it or something like that. And I realize it doesn't look good that way, but it's still functioning properly. Really, really, really important to hit those points at the console so that those things don't bite you in the butt down the road.
But yeah, also just age. Age is not a defect. So it's got to actually not be functioning properly on there. So just because something is old, but it works, it's old.
Amen. It still works.
That's why I gotta make fun of Jim.
I tell my
yeah, another thing on this too, is just kind of like, does it require a licensed contractor? Like I said, this is not like your, Home Depot. To me, it's something that pops up on a lot of inspections, just like the gutters have leaks in them. Is that really going to prevent you from buying the house? Okay, so we need to lose sleep over that. And if you have a tree growing out of your gutter, that may be something we want to get taken care of before we close, because that can lead to other issues. But don't let small little tiny items throw a wrench in a big deal. It's tough getting buyers under contract. Don't let them walk away for something that's minuscule at the end of the day. We can find any number of handyman or little, neighborhood kid can climb the ladder and clean out the gutters. So just don't let those tiny little things throw a giant wrench into a deal. We want to do everything we can to hold together, and to me, it is a skill holding deals together, because everyone gets the home inspection, especially as a buyer, and they freak out. Like, oh my God, I thought this house was great, and it's got, a 38-page inspection report. I've seen some that are 100. A lot of pictures, a lot of fluff in there. But, being able to translate that for your client as far as what's a big deal, what's not a big deal. What can you take care of? What can sit there for another 10 years and not get touched and not really matter at the end of the day? And just being, knowing knowledgeably what to look forward to look at and what makes sense to ask for. So I see little tiny settlement cracks going above our doorway at a 45-degree angle in a house that's 40 years old. It's old. Is that a true defect? No, and the house settles over time. You walk into houses in Churchill and the marble sort of now dropping marble on the floor. You don't know which way it's going to go, and you could do circles and run in different sort of direction. But you also got to know, are you looking at a house that was built in 1910? It's going to have some crooked stuff over the years. It's not going to be perfect and plumb and level. Just knowing that too. So obviously, new construction is a little bit different. We don't want marbles running all over the place on some of those houses, but we've got to make sure that we're looking at stuff and knowing knowledgeably what we're looking at.
Yeah, thinking about gutters, right? Like, gutters are not an issue because in 6 months you're probably going to have to clean your gutters again. So that wouldn't rate. So we wanted to give y'all a little bit of verbiage. In full disclosure, Kevin gets total credit for these because I just grossly copied and pasted. But what we wanted to try to do is give y'all some specific verbiage and situations to protect your clients, right? Kev, you want to hit the line item minimum?
Yeah, so on this one, it's pretty much saying, hey, we're not going to be asking for repairs that are under a certain threshold. So, I use this depending on talking about the aerial, how competitive is this offer? Are we competing against, first-time home buyers for people, or are we, up against cash? So to me, this can be, on a smaller house, it's, my client doesn't have a ton of cash to throw around for defects. This number can be as little as $250. I've also written it where it's $5,000 for less too. So saying you can purchase or agrees to waive any individual inspection item under $500 as noted in the inspection report. That means if anything in the inspection report is above $500, you still have the ability to ask for that pursuant to paragraph 16 in the contract. Anything below that we can't ask for. So it's kind of like we're getting rid of all the nickel and dime sort of small stuff, and we're focusing on what really truly matters, what's going to cost clients money. To me, you put a $5,000 number on this, it's kind of like, okay, the only thing we can really ask for probably here is roof, or if we have these sort of crazy foundation issues, you're kind of protected there. But for the most part, everything else is going to fall underneath that, and you're really just being able to have a home inspection to kind of know what you're getting into before you have to sign on the dotted line and fork over all your money on that. So.
In a similar fashion, right? The lump sum, right? You're waiving kind of the first amount of inspection items found. So the buyer will assume responsibility, in this case, for the first $5,000 of any and or all inspection items that may arise during the home inspection. Excludes sections F and G, so your client's still protected there. Any amount above the amount listed will be negotiated based on section 16 of the purchase agreement. So there again, instead of going, maybe one item at a time, it's a larger sum. It's another tool for your tool belt when you're trying to negotiate for your buyers.
A lot of stuff too is asking the listing agent, what do you prefer? What language do you like? The goal is, we're trying to do everything we can, get the deal, under contract. If, the line item minimum, the lump sum, they can kind of be somewhat interchangeable, but if an agent prefers the lump sum over the line item minimum, then, have that discussion with your client and kind of how it all works. I'm personally not a giant fan of the lump sum, just because your inspector can put, the light bulb's not working, and on an electrician to change a light bulb is $125. You add up that whole list, and if they're really, they inspect the crap out of the house and they put every tiny little defect on there, that number balloons up very quickly. So I've seen some stuff where it's, $20,000 of, $100 items. So that stuff too, then it becomes kind of a gray area what you can't ask for. But it all depends on who you're working with and who's on the other side of it. And that's where the communication part comes in, is just vital to it, and having those conversations up front and putting the best offer in front of them as you can.
It's rare, I think, to call, let's say you got the buyer, you call the listing agent after your home inspection, you give them a general synopsis of how it went. It's rare that I haven't been able to find something about the seller's position in terms of, well, they were expecting to make some repairs, or, well, you know, they're really not planning on doing much. I like to take that information and kind of include it along with the other information as I get with my buyers after that point.
And sometimes even with that too, you may be talking about line item minimum and lump sum, you can tell that they've already checked out because they have 3 offers with waived inspections. You know, and then you can take that information back to your client, hey, are you willing to waive the inspection on this? Because 3 other people probably are. And that may influence how aggressive they need to be on that contract, or hey, we need to, you know, we're out on this one, we've got to go to the next one.
Right.
In today's world of people like often delaying showings, you know, showings start on a certain date. If they're really serious about a property, line up a walk and talk inspection, is what they call it. A lot of inspectors will go out and actually, you know, you set your showing time. Maybe you try to get, you know, if it's a 30-minute slot, maybe you see if you can get 2 30-minute slots. And that inspector will go out there, and usually for about half the cost of a normal inspection. I had a guy charge a couple $100. They'll go through, they'll go in the crawl space, they'll check it out. So now that buyer feels somewhat good about it if they want to waive that inspection. But they got to be willing to invest a couple $100 to maybe not get the house.
Yeah. So you could go in and have your inspector with you, and you can walk out and be like, hey, this house sucks, I'm out of here.
Yeah,
right. And then you just paid, you know, $200 to have a showing, but you know, sometimes that's what it takes in order to go win offers. Obviously every client's different on that, but you know, that's a great practice to do, and also shows the listing agent that, you know, hey, we're on top of our stuff, we're gonna be simple to deal with, and you know, keep things very clean and efficient for their clients as well.
Now, with that, you do not have permission to remove the panel box. You know, you don't have permission to remove the front of stuff. When he says walk and talk, I wanna make sure newer agents don't get confused
Who
with,
says you don't have permission?
the seller. You have to have permission, like, we had this in the broker classes, and apparently you do not have permission to take any parts apart. Like, you know how in a home inspection, you can take the back off the HVAC thing? You do not have permission to do that because you are not under contract. And so in the home inspection verbiage on the contract, it apparently gives the buyer and the buyer's agent permission to have that home inspection. When you're doing a walk and talk, you can look at everything, turn everything on and off, go through all the stuff, but you can't take anything apart. So you can't take the panel box off, and you can't take the HVAC, like the side off of the HVAC, because what if you can't get it back on, or what if you
What
mess
you do
with it?
with Rodney?
Huh?
What you do with Rodney?
Right, well, if you're with Rodney, you're good, because Rodney's the person
that off?
cover it,
Okay.
no matter what happens.
And also, yeah, with that too, I mean, let the listing agent know, like, hey, I plan on bringing, you know, my clients will bring the home inspector with it. I'm all for that because,
Ask them, can we do this?
Absolutely, you can ask them, but like if you just schedule a showing and then you show up with your cousin Billy Bob, who's all HVAC / home inspector, he can't just take it apart and then be like, oh, it's broken. So.
If you ever get an inspector named Billy Bob, like, that's give me a red flag.
He's gonna be the best one. I know. Are you kidding me?
He's gonna fix it for like $3 and a couple paper clips and a piece of tape.
You're welcome.
And so, last bit is, you have somebody that, like Kev was saying, they have some mechanical know-how. They know they're buying a used home. They know that they're going to be going in and making some repairs, and they actually appreciate the punch list. You do a home inspection for informational repairs only. You know, obviously let them know that this isn't something that allows us to get out of the contract, you know, for any reason, but it's going to give you a good idea of the most important things to work on and how to prioritize them from there. I always just use it as a punch list. Like, congratulations, you got your first punch list, and hopefully the ladies don't get mad at me, but like, your wife didn't write your first honeydew list for you, the home inspector did. All right, so tips for home inspection day. These are a little bit more broad. I know I wrote, the first thing I wrote here was like, invite all interested parties to attend the inspection, and then I used the example of the dad that tried to kill the deal, but he didn't try to kill the deal until he saw the report. He loved the house up until that point, and then he got one piece of paper, immediately felt the urge to take care of his children, and tried to sabotage the deal. I think maybe people would like to get pissed off at that guy or something like that. I think you should have befriended that guy a long time ago, right? So I like to ask as we're scheduling, like, is there anybody else that's going to be attending the inspection with us? Is it going to be just you two? You bringing anybody with you? Because what I'll do is I'll actually put that person on mission. If Dad wants to come, we're actually not going to tag along with the inspector, but Dad is. Have fun. Like, I'll even talk to the inspector, like, sorry, bro, he's going to wear you out today, but he's not going to wear us out today. Because typically what I'm doing, or what I try to do, and they might do it a little different than I do, I try to take a home inspection as an opportunity to say, okay, well, when am I going to get 2+ hours with these clients again? If you think about it, our moments with clients don't typically last a long time in one fell swoop, right? Like it's a 20-minute showing here, 30-minute showing there, a consult, something like that. But for a home inspection, you're with them for 2-3 hours sometimes, and that strikes me as a really good time to get to know them better. So let Dad or the nerdy friend or whoever follow the inspector around, get them to sit down at the island with you and get to know everything about those people that you didn't already know. So to back up a little bit more and probably bore y'all, find out what you don't know about them before the home inspection, so that when you're at the home inspection, you're just kind of having this informal, friendly little interview, and you're banking information on how you can serve these people greater in the future. You might even actually find out something about them in those moments that'll help you guide them through the home inspection process. It just strikes me as a rare opportunity to not jump into the drama, not be a hero, not make it more than it is. Let the man do his job. Let's sit down and have a good time for a little while. I got some stuff I want to learn about you if you got the time. Who's gonna say no to that? Or be bored out of your mind for 3 hours, hoping that the inspector doesn't come and bring you something that kills your deal. You know, what you got there, Kevin?
Yeah, I always try to be initial appointment with him, even when I'm kind of pre-qualifying people before I even bring them into the office. Hey, who else is going to be involved in this training? Is it just you and your spouse, or we're going to have parents involved? Because if parents involved, I want them there on the buyer meeting too. Because last time, thanks you guys for Mr. Boring Rodney. Yeah, last time when you get people there, and last time they bought a house was 30 years ago. Have things changed a lot in 30 years? Yes. Okay. So they may not know what's going on in the transaction. If they want to be involved and come on showings, anything else with you, they're going to be tagging along the entire time. I always invite everybody there, and usually they say, "Well, it's going to be our decision." Well, I bank that in the back of my mind too, and it comes up. Well, my dad says this. Was your dad buying the house? Or you buying the house? Are you a big boy? Are you a little girl? I mean, what's happening here?
I'm pretty sure he doesn't say it like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll deliver a little bit better than that, but it's still kind of be able to remind, like, hey, your dad wasn't at the inspection. He wasn't here based off of X, Y, Z. This is all stuff that can be fixed as well. Does it depend on how big the issues are? Yes, 100%. But don't let someone else just come in there and kind of take command of your transaction. Like I said, if they're going to be a part of the transaction, they got to be involved in the entire transaction, not just there for the home inspection. Same thing to what Larry's saying. It's a great opportunity to spend face-to-face time with your clients. Get in there, learn stuff about them. I also like to make them fall in love with the house even more. What are your plans for it? What colors are you going to paint this room? Where's the the baby going to go? What walls are you going to take out? Which bathrooms do you want to update? What's up? And just paint that picture for them. That gets them excited about the house. That way, when they hear, hey, it's got a floor joist that's cracked. Some people freak out about that. That can be taken care of and fixed. So, but they're still in love with the house because all the things they've just told themselves and talked themselves into about the house. Obviously, the house is a giant hunk of junk, then we've got to go get out of it and bail. But if you get them to fall in love with it more, chances are better of you keeping them in the transaction.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's an experience, and you have a lot more control over it than you might think. And so the last thing I wrote was just be the eye of the hurricane. I talked about that a minute ago. Don't jump into the storm, right? Be the calming part of the storm. You want to clarify what's normal. Buffini used to have, I think it was like a CD, or it might have been a tape, but it was words to win with. And one of the things I remember was like, this is normal. This is not uncommon. A lot of times by truly diffusing situations with clients, they realize like, okay, well, I'm not the only one that's experiencing this, or most crawl spaces do have some type of mold or mildew. But at the end of the day, Kev's gonna take care of me. Kev's taking care of me so far. He's connected, he's got the people that I need to take care of this stuff. So even if it becomes an issue, it's not something that I've gotta bear the burden of by myself.
And having good contractors, to make sure you got contractors where you can snap a picture or say, hey, this popped up on the home inspection, is this gonna be a $1,000 fix or $10,000 fix? You wanna get those answers quickly and efficiently. It also keeps your buyer, less stress, and the longer things take, the more items just start going on in their heads. They start playing worst case scenario, and now you've lost their, the mental state of them has gone completely off the rails when, hey, this is stuff that's normal, common, not a gigantic deal. So we gotta make sure to keep them kind of corralled in that, and be able to advise them. Use Nate's phrase all the time, you wanna be able to guide and advise your clients. We're guiding them through the process of this, and we're advising them on, hey, this is a painful to get taken care of, or hey, this is a major issue that we need to think about before we move forward on the house.
And if you had a consult with them, my favorite thing about a buyer consult is there's so much that you clarify and you can use as a springboard after. You have to have the courage to do that, right? Because that puts you in somewhat of a feeling of a conflict with your client. I get that. At the end of the day, you had a buyer consult with them. You talked about very, very specific stuff, and as a professional, it's perfectly okay to remind them of like, people forget this all the time. It's easy to forget, but remember when we talked about this. It's normal, it's not uncommon. We thought it might happen to us, right? Use it as a springboard to kind of come back, not rub their nose in it, but at the same time, not let them get off as if the consult never happened and as if it's okay for them to just get selective amnesia whenever they want to. And like Kevin said, get answers to the questions ASAP, not just because you're on the clock from a deadline standpoint with the contract, but because of exactly what Kevin said. If even me, or most of us in the room, if you allow us to fill the blanks in ourselves, we're not gonna do it with calm answers. We're gonna throw some drama in there because it's got a little bit more flair. Well, if we get the answers they need quickly, there's no room for drama, it's just logical information. So get those answers quick. Good call, Kev. This is a nerdy blurb. I love nerdy blurbs. A lot of times I'll get a phone call or have an agent come to me and they want to have something that they feel is bulletproof for their repair request. That is probably not what this is, but it's my best version of it. It's something that you can put in to protect yourself and leave on default. So use this as your blurb for every single home inspection request that you do. And the way that it protects you is it references first who did the home inspection and when it was done. Then it references immediately that licensed contractors are required unless you say otherwise. So unless you write in that it's not okay, it's going to be expected that licensed contractors are used. Doesn't mean the agent won't call you back. Doesn't mean the agent won't be like, hey, can Billy Bob make the
That's right.
railing repair? Like, I guess Billy Bob can. We'll see how jacked up it is when we go do the walkthrough. But at the end of the day, you're protecting yourselves, right? You're protecting your clients, you're protecting your final walkthrough by asking them to have it done 48 hours prior, and then your CYA on your paper trail to make sure that that all gets taken care of. This is not to be included in the blurb. This is just to make sure that you include cost to cure. If you don't include cost to cure, this is just my opinion. It leaves things really, really, really vague with no basis of comparison, and at least a cost to cure gives you that.
You have to, per the contract.
You have to, per the contract, have a cost to cure.
Another thing on this too, you actually need to, you can't just copy paste the home inspector recommends getting the HVAC serviced and cleaned. You can't write, you can't recommend to have the seller have anything inspected. That's not their job. Your job as a buyer's agent is to get everything done, inspection, and then ask them to make repairs or give you credit in lieu of repairs. You can't ask them to have a structural engineer come out and evaluate the property. That's not the seller's issue, that is the buyer's issue. And that's why you want to make sure you leave yourself enough time in these contracts to be able to have contractors get by there quick. If you have 10 days to get the home inspection scheduled, don't get it done on day 9. Okay, get it done on day 2. You want to get it done as fast as possible. It's not that we're rushing through it. I mean, it's just availability on that. We want to get it done that way. If we need anybody else out there, you still have time contractually to protect your client on all this stuff. And I said you need to actually ask what you want to have done. too. So we see a lot of addendums where it's like, hey, it's a bad fascia board. Cool, good talk. What do you want me to do about it? You didn't write anything. So you need to write, the fascia board needs to be replaced or needs to be repaired. You need to be very clear on what you're asking for. You can't just copy paste the home inspection addendum or home inspection report on there. You need to actually ask what you want to have done and taken care of, whatever issue it is.
I feel like doing that makes you slow down a little more and actually read through what the items are anyway, which is never a bad thing. Maybe a little slower, but probably more effective.
Yeah, I usually say use like strong action verbs, and, kind of loosey-goosey stuff in
They say,
summary.
they won't say to recommend anything, that leaves it up for interpretation.
You're
You need
going
have
to do this
prepared.
action.
Yes.
And like my Virginia Beach contracts, they just put like items 4.1, 6.3, 16.2, 18A, and say, no, like, write this somewhere.
Yeah, you have to write out what you want to have accomplished, and that's what gets negotiated.
And think of it this way, right? Like if you don't, how the hell are they supposed to know, right? So you've got the control, you've got the report, lay it out properly, like Tommy said, use good grammar, right? Don't be lazy.
Well, you're trying to bind them.
Right.
You're trying to, or at least some items you want a very firm commitment, this is what they're going to do. Some of them you might leave open-ended, like repair as needed, something like that.
Hardboard siding, repair as needed, but if there's bad spots, things
Yeah,
like that,
later on,
and it comes out of the
yeah.
mercy of whatever the contractor's making repairs thing, so that board's good enough.
Yeah.
And that's where you gotta, same thing, windows, you got fog seals, make sure you try to point out which windows have the fog seals, don't just say there's 5 fog windows. They're in bedroom, 1, 2, and the 2 in the kitchen. Make sure you got that all that stuff kind of listed out, and be clear with your home inspectors on it, you do need it detailed.
Yeah, so it's definitely okay to hold your home inspectors accountable to what your standards are. I also think it's a good idea to interview them. Now you call Kev and you say, Kev, who do you use for your home inspections? And Kevin gives you somebody. I think that's probably okay to trust, right? But if you're a new agent and you Google a home inspector, you probably want to interview them first or something, because there are, unfortunately, I don't know what the regulations for home inspectors are out there, but there's not a ton of it. So you want to make sure that you don't get some Yahoo, and you want to get somebody that's not combative and willing to do it a version of your way, as long as your way is, honest and ethical.
Keep in mind, they're a reflection of you as well. So you want to have an inspector who knows what they're talking about, what they're doing, and they're there to protect your client at the end of the day. We don't want somebody who, that is, fresh out of home inspector school and doesn't know how to use a screwdriver, doesn't know what a fascia board is, whatever it may be. You want to make sure we have some competence going into that. There's a lot of home inspectors that got out of the business too. When everyone started waiving stuff, there's been kind of a concept. There's some people who have come in and backfilled that have never done a whole lot of home inspections. So you got to kind of know who you're working with on that. It is kind of a fine line of having someone who's going to be super, super detailed and just scare the living crap out of people. Or the person's going to be like, oh yeah, everything looks great, hunky-dory. You can see stuff falling off the side of the house.
7 minutes.
Yeah, so, all that.
All right, this is more of a recap, right? Like, but in general, treat people the way that you want to be treated, right? For anybody that's bought a resale before, they've probably been through a home inspection, right? Just try to put yourself in your client's shoes. It's kind of the hometown philosophy anyway, right? But treat people the way you want to be treated. Set the expectations at the buyer consult. As if we haven't said that enough today, it is very critical to have a buyer consult and to set the proper expectations. How you do it is everything, but a buyer consult can be a blast if you do it the right way. And then discuss big ticket items at the home inspection. It gives you a chance to normalize them, make them not big earth-shattering events. It helps you kind of even tell the client what your plan of action is, so that they can think about that on the way home instead of just thinking about what the issue is. And then always have a plan of action before contacting your client. I say have a plan of action because I know that it forces us to read through the home inspection thoroughly, the summary thoroughly. It forces us to think about the advice that we're going to give in lieu of just picking up the phone and going Wild Wild West with it to try to figure it out. I think that makes for a better buyer experience overall. And then one thing that just my little squad does, I typically like to send people stuff via PDF before I send it in Authentisign. I used to just send stuff over to try to get it done fast. And what happens is more incoming calls and me investing more time than I would have just invested if I sent it in PDF form and said, hey, if you got any questions, let me know. If you don't, at that point, I'll send it over to you in electronic format. And then always keep the agent on the other side of the deal in the loop. They are not against you. In fact, they probably want to sell their seller's house if they can, and you're the one dancing with them at that point. That's a lot easier dance than letting you go, finding a new partner, and then figuring out how to dance with them.
Same thing, don't, so keeping them in the loop. After you finish the home inspection, before I usually even pull out a driveway, I'm usually calling the listing agent, hey, went well, there was, X, Y, Z that, are kind of note, but, overall, things look great. But, also have to be careful of, once buyers get that physical, they may have, talked with the home inspector, yeah, everything was good, and they get the report, and they're like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. So you don't want to, commit to anything right there, just let them know, like, hey, there was no gigantic issues, or hey, there's some stuff we're going to have to talk about on this, I'll, be in contact more with the report. But having that direct communication following the home inspection is great, because the listing agent wants to know how it goes, and more importantly, the seller wants to know how it goes. And so we have that gap in time where they're not informed of what's happening, how it went, their mind goes to a dark place. So we don't want them to go to a dark place. We want to kind of give them that reassurance of, hey, this is going to get worked out, rather than, I've had people before where it's like, you don't hear squat from the buyer's side of things, and meanwhile, I'm like, what's wrong? Are they leaving? Like, so that's where the seller's head goes, or your head goes. And then it turns out, oh yeah, nothing, everything's hunky-dory. Well, your love leader from your seller is freaking out because you haven't heard anything. And it's, hey, everything's good, find out if it's good or not. Staying in contact with agents, to me, just vital during this whole process. How you keep deals together, how you find solutions to things.
Yeah, and I would say part to that too is, I tell my buyers, hey, you'll get the report tonight, we're gonna talk tomorrow. And then there's really no reason why a buyer shouldn't be able to come up with their request within 24 hours after the inspection.
Like they give them a little bit of time to run the
Yeah, like review it at the night, and then we're gonna talk tomorrow. Like, it shouldn't be like, we're gonna come up with an addendum 5 days later at the 11th hour of the period.
Yeah,
so it's pretty quick on the buyer's side.
Yeah, and on that too, I always tell my buyers, hey, come up with your kind of your list of the top things that are the most important to you, because what you think, may not be as important to them. And there's gonna be stuff like, hey, this is gonna be a pain to get negotiated out because it's not a big deal, but I think it should be done. Well, a buyer may not care about that at all. Maybe cared about the fact that there's no smoke alarms. That's what they want to have taken care of. Well, that's a pretty simple, thing. If we need to negotiate that, or if I need to go buy a contractor's pack of, smoke alarms for somebody, I'm happy to do that to keep things, moving forward. On it. But yeah, I try to have them present me a list of, hey, what's the most important things to you, and then from there, that's how we kind of put our addendum together. And I'll still give my 2 cents if I think there's things that need to be added to that list. I'll put those on there, or we can talk through like, hey, that's a Home Depot item. We're not going to be asking the seller to go through kind of the hoops of that one.
I also say you're never finished selling. Like, you feel like you sold the house and you're under contract. Now, if I'm the buyer's agent, I've got to sell the listing agent on why we asked for what we asked for. And, maybe it's some of it's a fix, some of it's a credit, some of it's what we're not. I think it's just as important when you're trying to convince them or sell them on fixing these things. Hey, listen, I know these sound like big ticket items. Please note that we're 25 things that we didn't ask for, because these were the only ones that were major. And I had one person who was like super weird about all the electrical stuff, and it was like every single thing she wanted to fix by a licensed electrician. I had to call the guy and say, hey, listen, her previous house burned down from an electrical fire. So even though this all seems very nickel and dime to you, it's not to her. Please tell your seller going in, we need to know all the electrical stuff is done by a licensed person, because she just can't live there with a general contractor.
Yeah.
Even though it's all easy, like it's a $3 outlet, I still need an electrician.
Communication is key, because without it, maybe they get the addendum, what the heck is this?
Yeah, it's up for interpretation.
Everybody moves on. So today our goal was to give you some verbiage as buyer's agents, if you're out in the field and you're trying to be competitive in terms of getting your clients, under contract. We wanted you to feel comfortable at your consult as it relates to the home inspection. We wanted you to know kind of what to ask for when it got to that time. Wanted you to have some verbiage on how to make sure you had your paperwork in order. But outside of that, what questions do y'all have for me and Uncle Heather? He's a young uncle, yeah. Alright, you guys are a loquacious bunch today.
I'll say one other thing too, we can just kind of talk about briefly is credit in lieu of repairs. I'm a gigantic fan of that, especially on these smaller sort of items that are, you know, common and nothing crazy. I'd rather, you know, ask for, hey, we'll take $1,500 rather than you get a contractor out there to take care of these 4 things that may not get done perfect. You have to get it opened up to the re-inspection portion of things, and then you're getting the fact that this doesn't look exactly right, you know, to get the home inspector back out there, and it's home inspector versus contractor, and that turns into a whole thing.
Even warranty work, like is the work still warranted if it's the new owner?
Yeah, so a lot of that stuff is just simpler, just saying, hey, we'd rather take credit for it, and honestly, as a seller, I'd rather that you just pay $15,000 over to get the house, they're fine crediting, you know, $1,500, not have to touch it and move on to the, you know, wherever they're going to next. And so try to get it done as cheap as possible too.
You've got a great phrase that sometimes you'll include with the offer saying that too.
Yeah, we will not request any repair. We will request you know, credit in lieu of repairs only. That way, it's kind of saying, hey, we're not going to ask you to make any repairs, but we reserve the right to ask for some credit instead of you making repairs. As a seller, who wouldn't love that? You know, especially if in competitive situations they're getting above and beyond what they're planning on getting, then it just turns into essentially an as-is transaction. You're just negotiating money back and forth. So in that way, you pitch it to your buyers is, hey, now you get to hire Billy Bob or whatever licensed contractor you want to have out there to, you know, do the work that you trust. Seller's going to try to get it done, you know, not as cheap as possible. They're getting ready to bail on the house. They don't want to get nickel and dime with even more and more bills and have to worry about contractors coming in and out of their house, getting things scheduled and re-inspected and all that. Money, simple. Keeps everything clean. Make sure you get your addendums over to the lender on that as well. Never send a home inspection to the lender.
Amen. We don't want them. Trust
They
me.
want to see them. Once they see
Don't
them,
want
they
them,
want
don't
to see
want to know about them.
So,
And
yeah.
that brings up a good point. If you guys are writing up addendums, be careful of the language. If there's a loan involved and you say in lieu of repairs, all of a sudden our radar goes up. What repairs? What are you talking about?
That's
I want to know more.
usually, yeah, 2 separate addendums. You have your one that's between agents and buyer and seller, and there's one specifically for the lender which just says, you know, all parties agree seller to credit
Yep.
$5,000
$5,000. That's all I want to say.
Not in lieu of repairs, not in lieu of anything. It's just straight. one
Because
sentence.
contractually, I'm gonna, once the contract gets ratified, I'm gonna send it over to the appraiser. That brings him into the picture as well now, and so he's looking for those items, which we don't necessarily need him or want him to do because he's not a home inspector either. So, just, yeah, a couple of.
Less is more.
I totally agree.
when it comes to-
Totally agree.
Good stuff. You have any questions?
I was just say I'll pass along 2 tips that I read here recently. Well, yeah. One would be lining up the home inspection before you submit your offer, where you can tell the listing agent, hey, I've already got my guy penciled in for Tuesday at 9 a.m. or whenever it is. That'll be potentially helpful on your offers. The other was from like a book from like a DC agent who works a lot with condos, but that's where if it's something within an HOA or a condo association, making your inspection period 3 days. So it's the same amount of time you can get out of the contract for HOA review, you put your inspection within the same thing, just in regards to winning offers. So if you do that really short, tight inspection period, it's gonna be more appealing to the seller for the houses that you really have to kind of fight for, and you can still get the inspection done versus potentially losing it altogether.
Yeah, I mean, a 7-day versus 14 days is a big difference as far as time goes. I mean, everyone wants that peace of mind that, hey, we're on the other side of the home inspection. If you can talk to your home inspector ahead of time, figure out, hey, I can get out there, you know, Tuesday, you don't have to have a 5-day home inspection period. That looks much more attractive than the person who's asking for 14. So all those little differences really do add up when you're writing a contract for, and especially a competitive situation.
And right now, we are really struggling with septic inspections. So I had a contract that we wrote on January 9th. The septic people already had a plan, already had it in place with Maricopa County. And right now, they can't get anything done because of the massive amounts of rain. and we've gone to a second septic inspection company, and we're even on the wait list there with just replacing a system. So you wanna make sure that you know, if you're the seller and the listing agent, that you are getting that request for that septic inspection done early on. Like, I might not even wait until, because you're 2 or 3 weeks out right now, and everybody, we've gone to C&W, we've gone to Hanover, we've gone to 3 different companies, and so it's really a problem right now. And as the water table rises, we're gonna be seeing more and more alternative units. Alternative cannot go in the wet, in the cold, in the weather. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at it.
Yeah, septic issue not long ago, was it major repair, replacement? Yeah, she ended up just challenging the contractor to a bull in the ring. She won, and it was like 3 days later, it was all taken care of. Gotta find a way.
Yeah.
Gotta find a way. Nate?
If you guys could go back a couple of slides to the verbiage, the repair request, the way that's written, we'll need all of that done prior to closing. So I know sometimes people will say, well, can't they do that afterwards? Well, no, you guys, the way it's written, it has to be done prior to. So I thought
You'll
that
never
was-
see this, Nate.
Yeah. I probably shouldn't be here.
So say there's they make a great point though. Say there's 9 items. One of the items is an order issue, supply chain issue, right? It's going to take 5 weeks to get the product and then another week to get it installed. At that point, only one thing is going to supersede this, and that's going to be that specific item along with a pretty specific paper trail, on timing and stuff to protect the buyer. But
Holding stuff in escrow for repair, that's not really a thing if they're getting a loan. So that's gonna have to be disclosed. It can't be on the CD. You can't have any money going elsewhere that's not already accounted for in the transaction. So that people think that's a simple, easy thing to do. That doesn't really happen unless you're talking about a cash deal or something like that.
Nate, is that bueno or no bueno?
What's that?
Holding.
It's no bueno.
No bueno. A big one.
Doesn't mean we don't do it, but there's got to be a lot of specifics around the situation for us to do it.
Be open-minded.
That is open-minded. Most companies will say, no, you can't do it, because it's going to the secondary market. Everything has to be done, buttoned up when the loan closes. So.
I got money in escrow after closing when I went up against the VA administration one time on a foreclosure. But it was just the one time.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain exceptions to kind of everything on it, but
They're unyielding.
General practice is they don't like seeing it across the board. People want to, so gotta get stuff done either ahead of time or it's a reduction in sales price, something like that. Instead of them giving you $5,000, you're taking $5,000 off the top of the price on that. So there are ways around all that sort of stuff. But closing costs, go to closing costs.
Hey, communicate, right? Gotta go to work, gotta put some time in. There's plenty of stuff to do with the hours in your day. I think what you do though is what's gonna help you get better at this kind of stuff. So just making sure you're putting the time in. If you're a new agent, you're coming up on your first, second, or third home inspection, grab somebody. No harm in having somebody look some stuff over before it goes, to the final bout. And most anybody at Hometown that's been around for a while is happy to do that for you. So, yeah, if y'all don't have any more questions, I think we're good.
But, can I ask y'all one question? Don't you do a lot in Northern Virginia? At class, they told us that CVR NLS is the only place that has cost secured left. That Bright and Virginia Beach and like
It's
the
pretty
Western.
unique to
I don't think
Richmond.
it's flat. I think there's always been only one.
Yeah, but they were saying that some of them had switched over, but so if you get a contract from a Northern Virginia person, just realize that when they don't put their cost secure on it, if you accept a Northern Virginia contract, Virginia Beach, if they don't have a cost secure on it, they are not defaulting. They don't have to because their contract's written differently.
And it goes with like using the inspector, because I had like an inspector that I used from like Louisa, and then he gave me an inspection report back, and he didn't list any of the costs secured because he's not used to having to do that too. So
Interview your inspectors, let them know what the expectations are. Kind of practice before the check. Good stuff. All right, y'all smashed it.
Thank you.
All right.
Are you helping us evolve?
Yep.